stars tonight. Fields grow anew with the spring of life. In this sheath of truth will I wrap myself tight. The landscape, it goes for miles. The myths of old, they breathe in me life. Strength comes.
We have a question from Sean. Do you have an optimistic outlook for the next couple of decades of mankind's existence? You say that evil contains within it the seeds of its own destruction, but will we go down with them when they collapse? David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger are beginning to reach their final years of life, nearly a century old. However, I don't think it ends with them. I think their minions are worse. David Rockefeller is much more respectable and has respect for his worthy opposition. But the minions are downright sociopathic and reckless. Even Henry Kissinger wrote in the Wall Street Journal, as Brzezinski echoed in a familiar sentiment, they are worried that their minions will start a hot war with Russia, leading to a World War III, so bad even they couldn't endure it. It reminds me of the time Henry Kissinger was stopped by the TSA, patted down and searched. Kissinger's national security state backfired on himself. I disagree with you on that one point. I don't think that the minions coming later are worse. I think these guys were bad enough. And don't forget, they set up the architecture of control that the perverse little rats who are running it now, well, they didn't invent it. So you have to blame the inventors. Because these are inventors, remember, who lived at a different era, a different epoch, a different age. And therefore they had some amazing rivals. They had some amazing counter paradigms that they could have expounded, but chose not to. They neither aligned themselves nor expounded. You know, they had Alan Bloom. I mean, the list goes on. The Theodore Roosevelt. I can't come to the end of the counterpointing economic thinkers. You know, the Mises, Hayek's, even Ayn Rand. You know, so there's these people had colleagues, associates that could easily have changed the way things were. Whereas the latter guy is a bit of an idiot, an imbecile, who doesn't actually have access to the same intellectual, to different intellectual decisions. They're far more anemic and far more incapable of grasping schools of thought, you know, that existed in the earlier years. Another thing, I've done an interview on what I call the dying conspiracy, where part of what you're saying I agree with, and that is that there is a possibility that the new fangled managers of the architecture of power do such a crappy job, you know, and that they themselves inwardly have actually lost the thread. They're not really as motivated as your mad, bat crazy Lord Kitchener, right in the battle, gung-ho, slaughter the world for the sake of the empire. You know, their attitude is just simply less bat crazy. And they're also very decadent. They actually have almost all that they need. So it's quite easy for, you know, them to lose the focus of what is this all really all about. And there's other, in the interview I went into even more reasons. You can find the interview on the forum, my MTSAR forum, under What's New. But you know, there's just a question that they might be losing the thread. The other thing is that in a more sinister way, they also might be reaching the end game. I predicted this in the Atlantis book, where there's 4 outcomes. That was just a compressed 4. There could be endless outcomes, but I noted 4. Well, it could be that 1 or more of those 4 are actually, you know, being met as we speak right now. There's actually evidence for this. And therefore there's a kind of a sit-back attitude where, yeah, it's done. The button has been pushed. The result is the computer's churning out the answer as we speak. So let's all cheer. Let's all high-five it and get ready for the beach. You know, where's my swimming trunks? It's all over. We've done the work of our ancestors. That's sinister, I say, because, yeah, that could easily entail when they start to decide to get rid of a lot of us. And that the situation with Russia, another person was asking, but I'm not an expert, so I couldn't really get into that question, but the whole conflict that's now brewing, you know, one could say, you know, with the rise of Islamic fundamentalism, the brewing conflict, with Russia, and any umpteen one they can pull out of the drawer. They're always going to wheel out something. The rise of evangelism, again, who knows what, could lead to, as you say, World War III situation. And that is quite, the reason for that, though, would not be, as you're trying to say, a internecine conflict or necessarily any kind of incompetence. It's actually deliberate. This is actually done not because of incompetence or because of sparring between these groups. It's actually contrived. So that, again, millions and millions of human beings get involved in a conflict. That conflict involves some sort of germ warfare, and so even after the conflict is technically finished, people are poisoned, people are having endless diseases dropping like flies, somewhat like what AIDS was, right? I've also predicted that we can't rule out the hallucinogenic concept, that some of these people in these cults, especially the ones that are more powerful, the way it looks, the way things are going with the teens and the pop culture, I don't, and also this sort of penchant of jaded middle-class people to be running off to some juju doctor down in the jungles of God knows where, to be, sucking on entrails or taking some potions or whatever it might be in order to find the back door to God. Yeah, well, Big Brother watches that, and that's another way of bringing in, I think Frank Herbert was talking about this in his wonderful book Dune, in which the planet goes down because of the purveyance of various deeply hallucinogenic, and I mean way worse than anything that's been known so far. But these have such a vast effect on human consciousness that almost an entire different kind of humanity is sort of connected to the question of posthumanism. But when people start taking this, and this is a kind of a drug or a potion that nobody can withstand, not anybody from any kind of life, no intellectuals can withstand it, no religious type people, once taken, that's the end of it. The person just flips out in some sort of Blade Runner situation, and then subsequently from that, social life changes. It's happened before and it can happen again, and there's always that to factor in as well. And it's used as a meltdown. It's disseminated to the population as the elite black lodges are ready to either vacate this planet or activate one of their other policies. You see, something private to them, something they've kept sequestered, and now they don't need us anymore. So of all the different ways that they might want to dispense with us, this is just one of them that I can sort of see happening. And it's just like this Quatermass situation in which people just walking around in sort of Blade Runner existence, high as kites, blown out of their skulls, and all the rest of it. I think science fiction has a lot to say on that subject, and not a lot of it is very pleasant. Now, Sean, your question is, what is your view on the continuity of consciousness and the duration of the human existence? David Hume's bundle theory and the Buddhist concept of no self appear to represent the same idea of a transient, non-binding existence in which there is no core of being, just as the perception of a self. However, the Buddhists suggest a stream of consciousness that continues on after the physical body decomposes, but this contradicts other such concepts as the panpsychist notion of a ubiquitously conscious universe, i.e. no dichotomy between mind and matter. It's simply all mind. To conclude my question, what is the nature of the self? Now, I went into this in Disciples of the Mysterium, and we will be going again into this as we progress through the next 3 cards of the Path of the Fool, right? 6, 7, and 8. So, Sean, by all means, when you have time, come and check that out. I think a lot of these questions will be answered in that. I tend to be. I think the ones who think of a stream of consciousness, I think they're also open to the idea that there is a biographical self there, though. Because there is. How could they deny it? Through the myriad experiences of even just your own life. Take 15, even if you're 15 years old, 20 years old, even in the myriad experiences of your own life, some of them which could be, very fascinating to you. Working out to become the best sprinter. You and your dad working on model aeroplanes, or some other wonderfully interesting, pastime. Your parents are training you to become a pianist. You're totally locked into that. All the interest in which we can find ourselves totally immersed. But yet, at the same time, for all of that, plus all the other domestic minutiae we have to be entangled in, there's still that core biographical self there that isn't sacrificed. And if it is sacrificed, then clearly that person has become neurotic, right? The ones who are lost so utterly. They're actually very anemic people, as a matter of fact. If you study schizophrenics, you'll find out that their lives are deeply impoverished. They may think of themselves as Napoleon or, Jesus or whatever, but those people are not producers of music. They're not people. They sit huddling in the corner, or they're in a madhouse, and an actual phenomenological look at them is very, very, very painful to watch them. So that's the neurotic kind. Most of us, though, are into what we're into. Think about Eddie Van Halen. That guy sat in his room for hours every day practicing his guitar. He's perfectly sane. He didn't become neurotic. Or Stevie Vai or somebody like that, doing the same thing. Practicing all the time. You think Neil Peart learned how to be a drummer overnight? So one person could say, that guy's obsessed. That guy looks like a drum kit. But the point is, he hasn't lost his core self. And if you came to him and said, well, I'm the devil, and we're posing this to you now, you're either going to have to do drumming and you lose yourself in that, or I'm giving you the chance to keep your biological certainty, the constancy of who you are. Most of us would say, well then, fuck the thing I'm doing. I'm not going to lose my selfhood. I'm not going to lose my sense of identity, even as much as I love this thing. You see, so most of us will choose still to hold on to an identity. So that kind of goes refuting the first part of what you're talking about, where these guys are believing in the stream of consciousness. And that then would bring us to believe in the panpsychic thing, that if we're seeing some sort of flow of time or stream of consciousness, it's somewhat of an illusion. It's a working illusion generated by the mind. And I tend to be more of that school. And in my work, I don't want to say too much about it right now, because I want to deal with this in other works. But I think there's a lot to be said about the panpsychic notion. And as to the universe being conscious, I don't even know why we have to prove that. That's like philosophy trying to prove that there is a world out there at all. That took them 2,000 years, and it's obvious. What happened? But trying now to prove that it's conscious, or it has unconscious workings, or conscious, take it for granted it does. It absolutely does. And we don't need to sit here wasting time proving that. Animals exist. Plant life has its own unconscious processes. The implicate order, right? Look up the word implicate order on Wikipedia. There's definitely a consciousness. The quantum scientists are saying themselves, to the horror of other mainstream scientists, that the more we look at matter, the more it looks like mind. Well, good. As to the dichotomy between mind and matter, we went into this in the Disciples of the Mysterium book, mostly circulating around the ideas of Martin Heidegger, a German philosopher, who just nixed this idea. Again, by showing that, look, when it really comes to subjects and objects, that's a working illusion that's infected the minds of theologists, theists, and philosophers, but it has really no relevance at all. So any subject, anything based, any religion or ontotheology or philosophy that's based on any kind of hard dualisms, you can just throw that out, because greater minds than ours has proved it to be false. And as to the nature of the self, that's the theme of the whole of Disciples of Mysterium. So, forgive me, we're not going to go into it here. Pick up the book, read it, and you can always email me, with your thoughts on that, Sean. Be glad to hear them. So thanks again for that great question.